something that we're doing almost once a week. And our purpose is to offer information and to answer questions that help us realize that the energetic system and how it works as a whole. And to take what's normally looked at as different components independently, like the chakras, the kundalini fields, uh, the vibrational body. It has many names: vibrational body, outer body, and how all those things coordinate and work together as a unified system. So that's one of the real purposes. And people find that once they're able to make those connections, that there's a sudden forward progress that's very significant in their practice and in their perception, and also, um, let's say, most important, in their experience of how this is working and how it can contribute to what they're doing day to day in their life. Um, Not only things that are ongoing, interacting in professions, relationships, um, but also how new skills are coming online, so to speak. Online meaning in this vibrational atmosphere, in this vibrational network. New skills and abilities are coming online, and how to recognize them and how to utilize them, how to interpret them. So, of course, we encourage questions. It's one of the main reasons that we're doing this, is we want to know what are your either questions or observations in using this work or similar works, so that we can all support each other in moving forward. So are there any questions that pop up right away, Lynn? Lynn is here as usual.
I just opened up the chat on the Windows, so the main email questions we've been getting are just about the new course.
Okay, so a lot of you that are on our mailing list have noticed that we sent out a information letter that said that we have a new course that's out now, and we're inquiring, well, what are the contents and how's it working? So what I already said in the introduction is the broad overview. It's a volume of information. It's probably the largest course that we've put out, with a wide spectrum of processes, informations, and applications that build on a lot of the things that we've done already, but introduce a lot of new intermediate and advanced methods to go along with what we've already done. There are also some things that just kind of connect at the basic level to enhance that basic level. And once we get to a certain point with this, we realize that basic, intermediate, and advanced kind of dissolves into kind of like a whole field. And I know that from my own practice, some days the most beneficial work that I do is when I'm working with just the basic things. Now, I'm not thinking of it necessarily in that way, but then after I do some work, some processes, some journeys, adventures, whatever we like to call them in the moment, then I noticed that I was just using very what we formerly called basic information. So I wrote some things on the board to just go through quickly. And again, hopefully you'll have some questions, either about this or anything else that we've discussed in the past. But it's starting out with this adventure into the cranial system. And this is a very important, and I feel very hidden key to this energy system that I was talking about, where we have chakras and we have kundalini channels which are developing into what could be called the DNA of the light body. It has the same formation as the DNA. And so we have the basic and advanced applications of how to recognize and apply your awareness with the cranial motion. And it's quite profound. I think from my own experience and the results that I've gotten from it, what happens when you start to recognize not only the basic cranial rhythm, but also some of the applications you can use in the whole body, with the spine, with the nervous system, and with the chakras. the chakra workout 2, I just put chakra 2 here, but we have a course called Chakra Workout 1, where we lay out a complete program for balancing and synthesizing and interacting with the chakras and for different uh, uses. And we go on with that and add some upgraded materials. So how to use the chakra balancing for emotional adjustments, uh, the connection and the synthesis of the chakra movement and the cranial rhythm. And this is really kind of a jump, kind of a quantum jump, in my opinion, in our experience. Once we are able to feel it, utilize it, and invoke it at will. Um, Recognizing and empowering the result of this chakra cranial synthesis is to become aware also of how energy is gathered to the system and then distributed to the system, through the system. And we can notice that, but then we can enhance it. And we can use that in some very interesting ways. Um, as an example, just to access energy immediately for our body when we're hiking, when we're doing treatments, when we're involved in any kind of creative process. Um, Also, I'm talking about how our system is crossing over now in terms of how it creates energy from a combustion system to like a hybrid type system where we're utilizing just a straight flow through of energy. And rather than taking in like a compound and then breaking it down, that's the combustion where we add oxygen. And then there's energy is produced, but also there's waste produced. So this is a much more waste-free production. And it includes taking in and utilizing light, pure energy. And it also circles back to what we can derive from the chakra cranial distribution gathering awareness. So this one is really fascinating and something that you can just work with, play with, um, yeah, for a long time. I've been doing that now for several years to the point where I wanted to offer it in a course like this. Life transformation, this is one of the most useful things where we can adjust chakras to balance relationships, whether there are deepest personal relationship or family work environments. And there's all different kinds of percentages, let's say. Sometimes it's amazing, complete adjustment from friction to harmony. And then there's everything in between. And so we recognize that in my case, I appreciate it if there's friction, if it adjusts 5%, that's a relief. But oftentimes, as I said, it's much, much more than that. Um, with this life transformation, we have further in, um, diving into the construction of the light body through this course and some of the things that we offer on an ongoing basis. We have all the components in place. And now when we connect the dots, so to speak, or we could say we allow the flows of energy to interact, we have this maturation and appearance of the light body vehicle. And with that vehicle, we can do the first part, the first step into time space adjustments. And we can travel with our um, vehicle to future environments, as an example, and create our frequency in those environments so that when we actually appear there, it's in a way we're already there and we've harmonized that environment. So this can be useful for anything from a meeting, a social event, um, a teacher teaching a class, whatever it is that you might have any kind of um, anxiety about or trepidation about. And you can create the frequency of harmony and then transport that to a place before you arrive there. This is just one idea of how I've personally used it. And sometimes, again, the results are very, very profound and interesting. And sometimes they're minimal, but you can notice that it had an effect. So there's also a few supportive practices. The breathing, there's about 5 different breathing techniques, some that we've gone over before, some that are newly introduced to either prepare to do our light body type work, or you can use it in between to integrate, that's the word, or after to integrate. So either way, the breathing techniques are indispensable. Um, you can pretty much interchange them, but I would recommend over time, if you get into it, that you take an adventure into each one of them and use them as you're doing the rest of this light body work. Um, these movements that I offered, they're just very, very simple, but I use them all the time because when we're um, doing a light body process, we notice sometimes as energy starts to flow, there's maybe a part of the body that's not allowing free movement. So I use them to, um, create an opening and passage of energy that's kind of building up but not flowing through. And also, again, it's like an integration. They're very simple, but I find them effective, and that's why I just wanted to quickly offer them. It's kind of an addendum uh, of the whole course. So that's kind of the answer to the question that we've been getting. Like, well, what is this that you're talking about? Because we said that it was systems integration and liftoff. And once you bring all this information into the light body, which becomes like a vehicle, you will feel a sensation of lifting off in different ways and different dimensions, and be able to take that with you when you do different things, even in the 3-dimensional plane. Once you activate it and work with it, it's always operating in the background. And sometimes you can notice it with just part of your attention while you're doing almost anything else, that it's operating in the background to keep the system harmonized, to keep the system in sync with all the components of the system. So that's that's the answer to that question. Um, is there more questions?
Well, I wanted to comment on this idea that you say about taking breaks to move or do some
Oh, okay.
exercise.
Mhm.
Because for so many years, when I first started this work, I had a lot of physical pain in my body, like lower back issues. And so sitting for a long period was challenging. And it's a certain part of myself wasn't giving permission to get up and just move or take a break.
Mm.
I thought either I had to sit there and finish a meditative session or, keep doing it or end it. And now more and more, even though I don't have physical pain in my body anymore, but when I get the urge to take a break, I'll move around for a while or go walk around the block or do some jumping jacks or whatever comes to me.
Mhm.
And yeah, it helped. The fact that you brought that up helped validate for me that that's okay to do. It's interesting how many things I'm still conditioned about.
Yeah, I think I was the same. I thought, well, if I take a break, then it's over. And then, I guess at a certain point, as you expand your own frequency and system, you realize that you don't have to stay stuck in constructs like that. And I found, well, I can just do some of these very quick and easy movements. And then when I go back, not only is the what's going on still there, but it's oftentimes enhanced, and then there's a springboard to a higher intensity of what I'm doing. Yeah, so I think I encourage people to notice, like if you start to feel a stiff sensation, discomfort, do something like roll around, or I mean, I'm not saying don't do qigong movements or yoga, whatever it is that you do as your exercise system. And it can be variables. It can be almost anything that will free that uh, stagnated or stuck sensation in the moment.
What do you think if someone has trouble connecting to a certain part of their system, like either on a consistent basis or once in a while? Like sometimes when I'm having trouble connecting to a chakra or the cranial rhythm in one of the bones, I've actually been jumping ahead to some of the more advanced work. And somehow that often helps me connect and get it moving. And then I go back to the more basic things.
Mhm.
And I've been getting an impression that it's like when you learn to ride a bike
Mm.
and you have to start it slow because it's not moving yet, but that's the hardest part actually, to get it moving. So often somebody kind of pushes the bike, right, when you're ready. And so I've been doing that with some of my chakras. Like I kind of get them rolling on purpose faster, or make the cranial movement move a little more, and then I can find it and start to work with it more. I was wondering what you thought about that.
That's a lot of actually a lot of questions and a lot of comments in one. Um, I think that this idea of what gives you the push, that's like our core nature and our desire through the lifetime in different ways, whether harmonious or not, or frictional, to get back to resonating with our core self. Now, we could also call that our soul vibration. It's the core. Our conditioning and our traumas, kind of bump us off that resonance. And then through the lifetime, we seek to realign ourselves with that. So I think that's the thing that's pushing. And so when you have a moment where you may not be able to connect and you allow something to take you somewhere else, where does your attention go? And you allow that, then it opens up doors. And that may take you back to that place where you weren't able to connect, or it may take you even somewhere else. So I think it's important to um, work on things that are hard to connect to, whether it's a certain motion somewhere, um, uh, to feel one or two of the chakras, whether in the front or the back, um, and to work on that, but also to spend time and allow yourself. If it's not coming easily, then go to something that's easy. Work with it. Let it take you into expansion and to um, various kinds of perceptions, and then go back. Either it will take you back naturally, or sometimes you can willfully just go back and see if the door has opened so that you can connect. As an example, if you have difficulty to connect to one of the back chakras, well, you can go to the front part of it, work with that, and see if it penetrates and then opens up the door to feeling the back. Um, this is something that I put into this new program, is how the back chakra can be used to balance out the front, and the front can be used to balance out the back. And it's kind of opposite how you work with it. But at the same time, I've also found that if on a particular day the back of one of the chakras is not available, like I'm having not having easy time to connect to it, it oftentimes is also because that part of the chakra is sluggish, or there's a disconnect, and that may be also showing up somewhere physically, chemically, emotionally. And so then I go either to another part of the system, to another chakra, work with that, and see if it'll open up the door to it. But oftentimes, if it's my mind operating the system, I'll go to the front and see if connecting to the front will also help me connect to the back. So there's a lot of strategies. I think that the number one strategy is, when things like that are happening, not to be locked into um, how to think about it. It's like interpreted how, in the moment, what course to take. So how are we doing? Do we have any questions? No. Um, what do you say there, Lynn? Go ahead, say what you want to say there.
I didn't really have anything to say. I'm just, there's no questions coming in. So
Okay.
I was just saying, let's do some light body work.
Okay.
But today you wanted to talk about the significance of the cranial rhythm. And you were telling me last week that you're finding such a difference between having someone else work on your cranial system to then if someone can do it on themselves, and that really, even if it seems like it has the same therapeutic result, that it's a very different kind of effect. And I actually, Saul just mentioned that to me, so I don't know any more about it, so I'm actually curious about it.
So should I go over that first, or do you think I should just do something with the? Okay, I'll go over that first. um, so a big part of this program that I featured when I talked about it a moment ago was about the cranial rhythm, and I find that the cranial rhythm, the force of the rhythm, it coordinates chi in the body. It's not the only thing coordinating chi, but it is a major coordinator of chi. And it is one thing that if you read books about chakras, kundalini, um, about the energy body, the light body, the Merkaba, however people are stating that they're not uh, including the cranial rhythm. And it's a major force in and of itself. It has independent ramifications, and we can work with it therapeutically and independently. It oftentimes is connected with the flow of what's called the cerebral spinal fluid, and it creates like a hydraulic pressure flow in the system. And it opens the system and allows the system to close back. So you have what's called flexion and extension. And we can work with that therapeutically because when that flow is not in harmony, and there's ways, through the cranial therapy system to identify that, to diagnose it, then there's like corrective type of techniques. So it's very useful to have treatment with a cranial therapist, someone that's good at identifying those restrictions in the system and releasing them, and letting the system go back to its harmonic flow within this hydraulic type system. One example is that we have two bones on the top of the head called the parietal bones. And when you feel those parietal bones, you may notice that one of them is moving on one side more than the other. Or when they move, one of them or both of them are deviating in terms of their normal path of movement. So they might be twisting or some kind of hybrid type motion. And the therapist would notice that that is coming from an abnormal tension within the body membranes, and then work in certain ways to release that tension and bring it back into harmonic flow. Now, what I noticed is that when we are able to connect to that cranial movement within ourself, there's a couple of advantages to that. Not to say that it can't be accomplished through having someone work on your system. So a person on the outside working to what's happening on the inside, but yourself with your awareness from the inside working more outwardly. And when you notice from the inside and feel where the restrictions are, you can release those restrictions through the mind, through the intention. And as they release, you notice that there's a certain kind of motion in the individual bones. That motion is also present everywhere in the body. It's in the pelvic cavity, thoracic cavity. It's in the spinal flow. And what happens is that you connect to that movement inside the body, and then you allow it. You allow it to flow to its full flexion. And at the end of that flow, there's like a flare movement, and then back into its extension where there's something like a void or collapsing on the end. And you feel this steady movement. Thing is that with the development of the light body, which is an evolutionary change that many of us are going through, and if you're listening to this right now and interested in it, you're going through it. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a great thing. And it has challenges. And the body systems, the body chemistry, and even the body construction structurally is being challenged to open up to increased flows of energy. It's being challenged to have an increased capacity to process energy flow. And when we don't open up to that, it can create abnormalities in the chemistry. It can create things like headaches, dizziness, um, weakness, all kinds of physical maladies, and particularly the ones that when a person goes to the doctor and the doctor says, well, we're not really sure, and we did this test, that test, it could be, maybe it is, then there's a good chance that this is something that's involved in that case. Um, so, and you may have some of those things happening um, within yourself, emotionally, sometimes feeling very apathetic. It has these effects. So we want to have a way to notice that our system is trying to accommodate greater flows of energy, expansion of the what we call at the basic level the outer body, which is changing, evolving into the light body, and to help through connecting our consciousness to it to allow it. So one of the prime levels of this is to notice these movements, because in most cases for people that are interested in these things, it's trying to expand that range. And at this level, which we call the proprioceptive level, one fraction of a millimeter can be a huge change of distance. And when we feel it through proprioception, it also feels much more than just a fraction of a millimeter. It may feel like centimeters of movement, because the perception of range and depth is different when we connect into our proprioception perception, we could say, or proprioceptive awareness. So when we feel that motion of the cranial movement, we can allow it. But we also will notice, and what will come up and also may be challenging, is what was restricting it. Because a lot of times it's emotional restriction, it's chemical restriction, it's psychological restriction. What's going on at the subconscious, unconscious level is holding, gripping inside. And then once you notice that and let it go, the range increases. And then also we may notice how those things are acting out in our life at different levels. And so there's the challenge to let go. And when we let go, things move around, things change, and change sometimes also has its challenge to it. So I think in most cases, when you connect on your own, self-correction of the cranial system is not only correcting these imbalances for the physical level, the human level, but also what is trying to take place at the evolutionary level and in the completion of the light body and also the light body vehicle. And this is something that we can produce way more efficiently through our own connecting, rather than having someone come from the outside. I'm not saying it's not possible through a very, very sensitive and very developed practitioner. However, I think that most practitioners can correct this therapeutic level, but this other level is really something that we need to connect to and do on our own.
And it reminds me of that saying, like, teach a person how to fish and you give them their own power. In a way, how can anyone else understand the fine points of what you might need at each moment?
Yeah. And everything is not conceptual. A lot of what you will realize as these kind of restrictions let go, as the range increases, also our consciousness is expanding. And so it's not going to be all conceptual. Some of it's going to be intuitive. We're going to receive impressions. And we have also this reverse perception that conception is conceptual is real, and intuition is something that's kind of symbolic, but it's actually the reverse, where intuitive is more real and impressions are even more potent than even intuition. Anyway, that's, I think, the value and the hidden value of learning how to um, perceive the cranial rhythm, apply it in different ways throughout the body, throughout the cranium, throughout the spine. There's some very interesting spinal changes that take place when we allow the movement to increase in the physical spine. Each vertebrae is moving with this cranial rhythm, and we can allow that, and we can empower it, and it just takes us to a whole new level of understanding.
Someone who's on the live stream had trouble writing this question in chat, but they wrote, I already purchased the light body courses, the chakra workout, and the self adjustment. Is this course just a combination of those, or is it new?
Yeah, I would say that it utilizes a few of the things, and everything would be applied to very new ideas. 90% of it is new information that's taking quite a few steps further than the other courses. If you've worked with those other courses, it certainly will be helpful, but it's not a repeat. There's something else that came to mind about that. Anyway, it's a good question, but yeah, how much? Okay, so no more questions. All right, so I'm gonna.
Wait, Margie said, is this a one-day workshop or an ongoing course?
It's like all of our modules.
Sorry, I read the question but didn't have the mic on. Margie asked, is this a one-day workshop or an ongoing course over a few-week period? Yeah, Margie, it's an online course. So it's there for you to go through whenever you want, and it will take you a few weeks to go through it.
Well, let me give you an idea, like from my own practice as well. One of the things, just one small part of it actually, is what I just talked about with the spine and what happens when you not only connect to the cranial motion in all the vertebrae, but there's this thing where you allow it. And you'll find that you can notice it happening, but then you can connect a little further, and as it moves to open, you can give way to it. And that's allowing the range of the movement to increase, and then also in the other direction. I've been working with that one component within my practice for months and months, for a year now. And so there's many things in there that you apply immediately, but there are also each one of them, and there's many of them that you can just keep working with, integrating and working with different things together, and also what comes to you yourself that's not in the course as a result of synthesizing these different practices. So I hope that answered the question, because there's a lot of things, processes. There's maybe 3 or 4 different ideas with just the cranial system that you can not only practice them individually, but practice them within working with the whole light body system. So take our etheric body. One thing that's really, I think, very important is that we have a linear way to look at these layers of the outer body, and then we have a more, what is nonlinear, abstract way to look at it. And a lot of times, as an example, in literature, they will say that the etheric body, and I'm going to put this in inches and feet, and you can translate that if you use meters and centimeters. But that it's about from the skin surface to the border of the etheric body, when we're like kind of in a state where we're not focusing on it, because all this changes when we bring our attention to it. But that it's about 2 to 3 inches. And that if we go to the emotional body, that it's about 6 inches to a foot. Okay. And that the mental body is about 3 to 5 or more feet. The thing is that, before I say that, these are vibrating outside the skin surface. But as I pointed out before, once we start to feel let's say, the etheric body in relationship to the skin, we'll feel that it penetrates, it puts pressure. And then when we notice that pressure, we also notice that it penetrates in through the skin, through the muscle, to the bone. And we start to understand that the etheric body, the emotional body, and mental body are as much inside, penetrating deeply into the cellular, intercellular level, as they are outside. And we also, when we work with it, start to notice that the inner universe is just as vast as the outer universe. They're just an inversion of each other. The other thing is that as our attention goes out and connects to these different layers, a couple of things happen. One is that our overall frequency is expanding. So normally if we're vibrating in a frequency layer, that starts to expand. We start to vibrate in a much wider frequency range. The other thing is that what we perceive in the very beginning, just put a spine here, the density of the body starts to feel less dense as our attention level migrates to these higher frequencies of the etheric, emotional, and mental bodies. It's like our attention is, as it migrates to these bodies, also connects to these frequencies, and then our overall frequency range expands, like changing a channel on a television. It's changing the degree of input and reception. And so as we go further out, etheric, emotional, the frequencies become more and more expanded. And what we can notice is that this is no longer something to be perceived in inches or centimeters and meters. Each one becomes, in a way, a much wider dimension, almost like a world within itself. When you go into the emotional level, or we could say almost like the astral level, this is like a whole dimension where we can connect, receive information, travel, and connect to other types of energies there. And the same thing, even more so, a radiatory dimension, which is like, if just as a comparison, let's say that the emotional layer or astral type layer is like the solar system, that's how expansive that is once we go into it, that the mental layer would be something like the whole galaxy or galaxies. So it's expanding quantumly as we go further out into the outer body when we're doing this consciously. And also what happens is that the physical body feels lighter. And as our attention starts to migrate outward, the physical body disappears and merges out into these energy bodies. And the energy body now, which usually, if we're not paying attention, just feels like empty space, now has like a viscosity to it. It feels like substance, like liquid or gel. And so the change of perception that happens as we bring our attention to these different layers is also changing our perception of what they are and how they work, and how we interact at those levels is also changing. Just from the basic linear level, okay, that the etheric body is 2 to 3 inches, the emotional is 6 inches to a foot, the mental body is 3 to 5 feet. Those relationships are completely changing into vast. If you would keep connecting that to like linear concepts, they would be vast, like solar and like galactic type of distances. Now, this is something for you to discover through your own practice, and see if it also holds true for you. This overall outer energy body operates as a membrane. I've explained that before. It's like a membrane. It has semi-permeability. We can regulate that with our consciousness, which we do in a lot of different processes. And this the skin is like a protective membrane. It is like a membrane. It has permeability. And so when we go to the outer layer of this mental body, it's like a skin. Skin, it's protective. And so this is something that we'll talk about, and we have talked about in other courses, but that as this membrane becomes more permeable, there is a influx of high frequency information coming from the bodies that lie beyond that, uh, primarily and initially the soul body. Now, another thing that we can do when we um, bring our attention to each layer, and by attention, we activate. They're one and the same. If we're not noticing it, then it's just kind of unconsciously doing what it does. But when we connect to it, not only do we activate it, but we also begin to regulate it. And I think that's really important to notice. And what we can do, if we have command over this cranial rhythm, we can notice how this whole outer body system moves with the cranial rhythm, and how it coordinates. So, and also, let's say with a chakra movement, and you can apply this to the kundalini fields and also the outer body. It has a basic motion and rhythm, but also within that, there are different rhythms. So you have like slower, medium, and higher speeds of rhythm within like one chakra. So same with the light body. You have this pulse that's maybe anchoring more on the physical plane, but then you have other higher frequency pulses that may be on these other planes. So the one that I'm going to work with is this cranial rhythm. Now, if you don't feel it, then the processes should still be interesting, because it's a good opportunity to expand out into your light body, outer body, and then also very important to come back. So we'll do that now. And as I mentioned a while ago, it's always good to start with taking a deep breath in. I call this the parasympathetic breath, and explain that in various courses. Parasympathetic breath is very useful in and of itself. It helps to relax you. It's regenerative. Helps to calm your mind. So taking a deep breath in through the back of the nose, breathing in deep, silently. Find that the silent breath has an effect. And I think that the first thing to do quickly. Just notice the physical body, its density, its form, its shape. Try to emphasize its density and weight. Notice that your mind can do that. And when you bring your attention to the weight, you feel more weight. When you bring it to the density, you feel more dense. And that is in reality what happens. How powerful the mind is in regulating. And real quickly, just notice around the body and how, well, we don't usually think about it, but that it's just appears to be empty space. And now we'll do this attention migration and bring our attention to the space 2 to 3 inches from the skin surface. This is the etheric layer. And when you start to bring your attention through the etheric layer, front and back, sides, above and below, you may notice that it gives a sensation on the skin surface, this numb or tingling sensation. And I would recommend not to be in a hurry to get to the next step when you practice on your own, because as you feel the etheric layer and this numb or tingling on the skin surface, you may notice that it starts to penetrate the skin. And eventually, as you work with this, you'll feel it penetrate all the way down into the bones. When your proprioception becomes fully activated, you'll be able to notice it penetrating the cells, the intercellular spaces. Now we can migrate our attention 6 inches to a foot from the skin surface. The emotional body, the emotional layer. It's similar to the etheric layer. We start to feel a viscosity, a density in that what was formerly a space, but is now what we perceive as an energetic or bioplasmic sensation, 6 inches to a foot away from the body. Pressure on the skin from the emotional body and also penetrating deeply within. Feel the sensation front and back, sides, above and below. Sometimes while you're doing this, it can be helpful to return and take a breath or two. And you may notice that the physical body feels less dense and feels like it has expanded out into that space. It can become larger, even penetrating through the floor. And when we hit this emotional layer, astral layer, as we work with it over time, you may notice that it's a vast plane world that does not operate in the same terms of distance and time as our normal physical perceptions. And you may feel like you're sitting now in a liquid or a gel. The body has merged outward, and it takes you to the mental area. even more vast, quantumly more vast. The mental body, the radiatory body. Noticing the sensation, how it penetrates down through the emotional and etheric, through the physical. It gives a sensation. You may notice sometimes that it's a unique sensation compared to the other bodies. But nonetheless, it's a sensation. And if we follow out, we may notice that border I talked about of the mental body. It's a border, like a skin. And if we like, we can use the mind to allow that border, that membrane, to become more permeable, open it up to receive higher frequency vibrations. And now, for those of you that can find the cranial rhythm, whether it be in the head, the body, you can notice that there's a layer of this whole outer body that will flex and extend with the cranial rhythm. You can coordinate them. And as you synchronize the cranial rhythm, and if you don't feel the cranial rhythm, it's something to do in the future as you do work with the cranial rhythm. And if not, if you don't feel it right now, just stay in the sensation of the body, the outer body, and how it penetrates the physical body. But if you can feel the cranial motion, just follow through flexion and extension. And you can feel the whole outer body plus the physical body coordinating with the cranial rhythm. Now, once you are able to do this with the spine and the different areas of the body, it even becomes more dynamic. As the frequencies of the system expand, you may notice that the sensation of going up on the elevator. You may notice that your energy body feels like it expands beyond the walls of the room that you're sitting in, or at least touches the walls. And you could spend as much time as you like. Normally, it's calming. Oftentimes, ideas, information is coming to you. Issues are more clear, less oppressive if they're frictional type issues. Sometimes where there is a lack of harmony, you can discover that there is harmony. This expanded state relieves friction. So now with the mind, we can connect to that far out, further out border of the mental body. Almost like latching onto it with the mind. and making it less permeable, bringing it more toward your center, your physical, and pulling the bodies inward, less expansion, pulling it down to the skin surface. Become aware of the density and the weight of the body. This is how you ground yourself. And you can feel the body becoming more in its form, structure, weight, density, and the feeling of the outer body kind of fading into the background, becoming less viscous. And you can take a deep breath in. When you breathe out, let the eyes open. I always like to end processes with opening the eyes without focus, remaining in the sensations, and then come back to clear focus. And really bring yourself back into your weight, density, and structure. Feel that. Define yourself. And that's the grounding process. It's like coming down on the elevator, back onto the floor. Separation between yourself and the room now. Whereas when we were expanded, we felt like kind of emerging into the room. Now we feel ourselves separate, I say, autonomous from the room. And that's just a small example of how we can work with the outer body. So many different ways we can do it. If we do these live streams, we could do a different take on it every week. And you use like a basic takeoff point, like I did today, and then you explore the ideas that come to you. And as long as you wind up grounded and in your shape and density, then you'll be fine. Are there any questions? No? Hmm? So I'll just take a moment to wait in case anyone has a observation, what you noticed. We would love to hear from you. Lynn has something that she'd like to add, so go ahead, Lynn.
If you're on the live stream, it turns out you can't write anything into the chat unless you're subscribed to the channel. And I set it up that way just so that we're not inundated with bots in the comments. So if you want to help us out too, it's great if you could subscribe and like the video. But yeah, it's hard. You can't write in the chat unless you subscribe. If you don't want to subscribe and you have a question, you can always email us at lynn@shintaiinternational.com and I'll get back to you in that way.
All right, so once again, it's been interesting to connect with everyone. Is there... Okay, Lynn wants to tell you some things more about this new class that we have.
Also, just a heads up that the new online course, Systems Integration and Liftoff is its name, is at a great special for this first weekend. We really strive to make everything that we offer as affordable as possible. And so that's to help people out getting it that are here at the beginning. And if you have any questions of that, you can always also email us and we'll get back to you.
All right, so once again, I wish you all a great time. We're trying to do this Light Body Live once a week, once every 2 weeks. And you'll get a notification from us when we're going to be coming back up online again. But until then, we'll meet you in the outer net.